first off, before we jump in to episode, I believe we're number 53 of the MMA
I don't even
Creators
think we
Podcast.
can jump in there because I've got a segue off of the gyros.
You got a segue. All right,
I've got a segue off
It's been
of
a
the
while.
gyros.
It's been a while. It's been 2 weeks since we've had a proper episode. So go, hit me with the segue.
Because it's too teed up. There's rarely a case that we're talking about gyros. So the last time that we spoke, I've since gone to Phuket and dropped the t-shirt off to Volkanovski, right? And
yes, I was going to jump into this.
On the design, it had a gyros, but I feel like you had some questions for me. So instead of me telling you what happened, ask me whatever you like, and we'll get stuck into that, and then obviously we'll get into the fights as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to apologize for, again, this is coming out on a Monday, and that was my fault because I overslept the morning after pretty lackluster pay-per-view, which I have to say was pretty justified. I think oversleeping for that card, I think that would have put anyone to sleep, including Dustin Poirier. Sorry. But yeah, I was looking forward to jumping into some questions about, because obviously you said you met the one and only Alexander the Great Volkanovski. We actually spoke about this a few weeks ago. You said you were planning on meeting him as he came down, did a few seminars at Bang Tao, if I'm not mistaken. So I wanted to pick your brain about that because you said it was really a good time. You said he was a gentleman, as I expected and hoped he would be. So just take me through and take the listeners through what that was like.
So we'll rewind it to the start of the process. I, of course, have been to freestyle MMA before. So I've done an interview with Joe Lopez. I know quite a few of his teammates from when I went down there, but he actually wasn't there. But out of the absolute blue, a week before I was going to meet him, or at least I wanted to meet him, he dropped me a follow on Instagram. And then a couple of days later, he then revealed that he was going to Bang Tao in Phuket, which is a gym that he part owns, to do some seminars. So I thought, I can't. Yeah, he part owns it. I don't know if that's very standard knowledge, but that is a little inside information for you. So he came down to do the seminars, and I thought, I can't let this opportunity go to waste. And I'm in Bangkok at this point, so it's pretty close in regards to Thailand because it's only an hour and 20-minute flight. So it's not very far. And I thought, okay, I've got to take advantage of this. What do I do? Of course, I've got some comics on me. So I thought, okay, I can give him some comics. But I thought, I need to think outside the box a little bit. I need to think of something a little creative and a little bit fun. So what I did was hit up, I know I mentioned this before, so I'll just brush over this bit. Hit up one of my friends who's an artist I work with a ton, and we came up with a design for a t-shirt so we could do a collaboration of food fighters and cooking with Volk. So that's what we did. We created a design which had him on it, his dad on it, food cooking with Volk. It had the food fighters logo on the front, and then on the back was the picture, the design. And then we had gyros, we had vegetables, fruit, all that sort of thing. Really, really nice design. It came out really well, actually, much better than I thought. Hit him up on message, and then was very fortunate enough to meet up with him at the gym. So I went down there the morning just before he was doing his seminar, and he was doing some light sparring with Kiefer Crosby, who's in the UFC, who, funnily enough, is actually fighting Sam Patterson, who I know pretty well. And a random side tangent, but I'm sitting in my hotel the day before, and I'm on my balcony just looking at my phone, and I see that fight gets released. Sam Patterson, Kiefer Crosby. I look over my balcony and Kiefer Crosby is standing there. Weirdest twist of fate. Anyway, coming back to the main story. So I got to see him train a little bit in the morning, and then he just finished his training session and he said, how do you want to do this? How do you want to play it? And I said, you've just had your training, you probably feel a bit gross, like get showered up and whatnot, and then I'll give you this gift. It's nothing crazy, it won't take too much time, so on and so forth. So he said, okay, just come back to my hotel with me and I'll get cleaned up and whatnot, and then we'll go from there. So I said, okay, cool. So he was with his videographer, his photographer, who I'd already actually spoke to a few times online before, but I didn't actually know that was him. So we knew each other anyway, but didn't realize we knew each other. Go back to his hotel.
Yeah, you can't lie. You've been, some of the vocabulary. I was like, it's a little bit weird. No.
What, going back to his hotel?
Yeah. All right. I'm back with you. Carry on.
No. I thought it myself when I said it, but I thought I'm just going to roll with it now because I've committed to that.
No, you got to roll with those things.
Mate, there's a lot of things I would have done for inside access to big UFC fights. So
I
maybe,
would as well.
maybe things went down.
Don't worry about that. I would agree.
So yeah, we go back there anyway, and he just went and had a shower and whatnot, and we were just chilling. And then I basically gave him the gift. So I gave him the gift, and I pretty much prepared a really nice box, really nice packaging, with the black and the yellow of my brand. And then I gave him 2 of the comics. I gave him the t-shirt and then also a QR code that when you scanned the QR code, it went into the time lapse of the design on the t-shirt. So the artist is absolutely incredible. That was such a cool idea. Yeah, it's got the hand-drawn design there and it's got that played over some music. So it was a cool little package. And we were going to hopefully get set up an episode to film. Unfortunately, we didn't get time to squeeze that in at the end. Yeah, a little bit annoying. However, I don't know if this is public knowledge or not yet, but I believe he's coming to UFC Manchester. So hopefully we get something played out there. However, either way, very good connection to get, of course. Very cool to get that over to him. I filmed the entire process, so I will be making a YouTube video of it because before the event happened, I dropped my editor a message and said, right, okay, this is what's happening over the next few weeks. Let's really come up with some good YouTube ideas, thumbnails, titles, and let's really think about this of how we can grow the YouTube. So I know that this has gone a bit creator side at the start rather than the fights.
That's my cup of tea, isn't it?
So that's what I did, right? So I filmed YouTube. Everything, got all the content, and then we'll be chopping that up over the next week or 2 and getting a video out of the whole process. So you'll be able to see everything unfold from the airplane journey to me getting there, to going to the gym, to meeting him, to giving it to him, and everything in between. So yeah, lovely bloke. Look forward to meeting him again, hopefully in another work capacity. And yeah, good connection to get. Very good connection to get, of course.
Understatement of the century. Only probably arguably the greatest featherweight of all time. No disrespect to Jose Aldo. You could debate that amongst yourselves, but there's definitely worse connections to have, I gotta say.
It's a very good point. So yeah, it was fun. It's good. Nice.
I mean, obviously, looking back again a bit more recently to yesterday, Saturday night. So 2 days ago, UFC 302. Pretty lackluster card. I think you could probably agree with me there. You're shaking your head.
No, I'm shaking my head.
You might be the first person.
No.
You are right. It was shit.
No.
Yeah.
Shaking my head as in it was difficult to watch.
Yeah.
And I'm a diehard.
I mean, you had the luxury of watching it in the morning. So there is that. Did you not?
No, I didn't.
When does it start for you in Thailand?
Well, I had little to no sleep from the previous night because I was working quite late. And then it started at 5 a.m. So I woke up pretty much at 5 a.m. and then really had to sort of prise my eyes open for the early prelims. And I think, don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure I'm correct, until the feature prelim, maybe the one before that, everything was a decision.
I believe, was the first submission and first finish of the night. I think you're right there. Yeah, rough. I think you're right there. Again, maybe we are wrong, but if we are, it was only by 1 or 2 fights. The point is, a lot of decisions. It's not what you want to see every time you turn on the UFC, especially when you're staying up really late for it, as we tend to, as UK fans, and even with you in Thailand, it's still a rough one. Yeah, I mean, the main event was fun. Dustin Poirier versus Islam Makhachev. I think that rounded off the card with a little bit of a flourish, a nice little end to an otherwise lackluster card. Even if it didn't go the way of the movie script, the fairy tale ending that everyone wanted. We wanted Dustin Poirier to lift the undisputed UFC lightweight title, but it didn't come to fruition, sadly. Islam Makhachev, though, no credit taken away. I thought he looked incredible. I thought Poirier did a good job of dragging him into those deep waters, and I think that's where Makhachev really, the holes in his game start to open up a bit. I think Volkanovski in their first fight exposed those in a lot of ways. Makhachev, he starts to fade and he starts to look sloppy on the feet. As technically good as he is in those opening rounds with his stand-up, does start to leave open gaps. That's what I would say at least. And I guess that's more credit deserved that Makhachev was able to find that finish with an undeniably slick Darce choke, which is one of my favorite submissions because it's one of those submissions which you kind of just, the opportunity is there, you spring on it, similar to the way you finish a guillotine. You know, I think the setups are quite similar in a lot of ways in how you enter. Yeah, it was a beautiful submission, and credit to Dustin to making it to the 5th round, and not just making it there, but throwing some serious adversity back his way. And when that fight was done, I was really curious on what the scorecards would turn out to be, because obviously we had a lot of questionable judging that night. I don't think that was any secret. But to be honest with you, I think you can argue that Poirier won definitely one of them, and maybe you could argue a second. I think it would be maybe a little bit too far-fetched for a 2-2 going into the 5th. But one of the judges did score it that way. So, I think it was definitely not out of the realms of possibility that we saw Dustin Poirier lifting the belt or his hands and having the belt around his waist if he won that last round. I don't think he did personally, but what did you think? I thought it was a pretty fun fight overall, though.
Not even necessarily scratching a decision, because there were very questionable scorecards, but also that was a point where both guys were tired, both guys were a little bit labored, and that's where Dustin finds his knockouts, right? Usually quite deep into fights, usually where it gets a bit scrappier. Islam was entertaining the clinch for longer and longer, and even though he's very good there, the risk to reward's extremely high against Dustin, because that's where he's most dangerous. So I think Islam just spent a little bit too long in the clinch at times. He done good work. He shattered his nose even with a knee. That was impressive. And for the most part, his striking was very, very good. But the last question that you could have over Islam is that durability across 5 rounds. And he proved in this fight that he has that in abundance, because Dustin Poirier is probably the best fighter in the UFC at those types of fights. Those types of big moments, big fights, grueling, 5th round, 4th round, blood, sweat, tears, everything on the line. Opportunities start opening up. People start taking them. People start dropping them. And Islam just went and showed that he's got every level to his game. He's got the striking. Defensively, he's very good. Offensively, he's very good. He strikes moving laterally. He counter strikes. He's good in the clinch. Then off the clinch, he's got his grappling with his trips and his throws, single legs, double legs, takedowns in the opens, takedowns against the cage. And then after we saw 5 rounds of that, what does he do? He adds a tiny wrinkle to his game that we've somewhat seen before, shows the next level in the toolbox with that. Some people call it a golf swing. Some people call it a low snap. There's so many different names for it.
Some sort of ankle pick thing, yeah.
Some sort of ankle pick. And I've been looking at a lot of different breakdowns for it and researching into it. And a lot of people call it different things. But that's the level. Because up until that point, Dustin had done everything to negate the grappling. Absolutely everything. Expertly. And that's one thing that I have to say is the improvements, not just since the Khabib fight, but over the career of Dustin Poirier has been so impressive, especially towards the latter end of his career where he's saying, okay, this may be my last. Even though there was a lot on the line, you sometimes see people go in there and it's clear that they maybe haven't addressed the issues. But it was very, very obvious to anyone watching that he had spent 6 hard weeks with Mateusz Gamrot defending that single leg. Because his single leg defense was impeccable. He done very well to stay safe on the floor. And it was just that tiny, tiny gap. And that just showed the level of Islam. And he only needed one chance. And once he got it, and that's what shows the levels, right? That's what shows the levels to the greatest. They don't need big opportunities. They don't even need you to give them a big opportunity. They go and take it. So I just think it really spoke to how high level Islam is. But it's so crushing because Dustin's so close. He's so close and he'll be sitting there. The last thing I'll say on this, and it leads me into my question that I've got for you. He'll be going home saying he's retired. He's got all the money, all the accolades, all the recognition, all the notoriety, 100%. And I do believe that he wants to retire because at this point, what is the point? I agree with him. But he's going to get home. He's going to do a few school runs. He's going to be a few months in. He's going to enjoy time with the family, a holiday. And then it's going to hit the 6-month mark. And then he's going to watch a big card. And maybe he goes to a jiu-jitsu class and he's going to think, oh, I can't let this go. Not yet. Not yet. Look at my last fight. I'm as good as the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. I'm tooth and nail with the pound-for-pound best. I can compete with anyone. He's going to get itchy knuckles in 6 to 8 months. I guarantee it. So, which leads me to my question.
It's a fighter's life.
Which leads me to my question. What's next for Dustin and what's next for Islam, in your opinion?
Retirement, for one. I don't like... I've said this many a times before on here. I don't like fighters overstaying their welcome in this game. Tony Ferguson, probably the prime example of that. It's just not nice to see. When you see guys, their body fading... You know, they just start to just dip out their physical prime and you can see the fall off literally in front of you. And I do think we saw it last night. As good as Poirier looked and as much as he surprised everybody with his performance, I think you could see, obviously you have to take into account Islam's oppressive pace and the cardio and sort of what he's able to set on Dustin. But I think you could see that Dustin's body, he just looked a little bit more labored. I think we saw that in the Benoit Saint-Denis fight as well. Just his movements, particularly on the feet with his striking, just looked a little bit slower. Maybe it's just me reading into things too much. I don't know. That's how I saw it.
Devil's advocate?
I think there's an argument to be made there. Shoot.
Devil's advocate. He's facing arguably one of the most dominant grapplers of all time. So your reactions are a touch slower. There's a lag between the striking. You see very, very good strikers just be a fraction off the boil, because you're constantly second guessing every single movement. So I don't think he was necessarily, he's never been quick. So I don't think he was necessarily slower or more labored. I just think it was more of a case of Islam constantly is giving you that level change look that slightly changes their reaction speeds. I don't necessarily think it was an age thing as much as it was that. Compounded by the fact that you're getting taken down, getting back to your feet, body locks, fighting submissions. That's an insanely grueling pace. If that's 5 rounds standing, I think...
That body triangle?
I think Dustin looks a lot fresher.
I do not want to be anywhere near that.
Than Islam in the 5th round.
I'll sort of sit on both sides on that. I'm in the middle of that. But yeah, I mean, again, I just jumping on that quickly. The body triangle, as I said, in that first round when Islam got him down. I will say Islam actually rocked him pretty good. I had a sneaky suspicion Islam might have had a finish on the feet earlier. That was one of my earliest predictions, was that Islam would actually get a knockout over Dustin. And I'd say he landed a nasty straight right in the opening seconds, which led into that takedown. And you could tell that affected him, because look how good Dustin's defense held up throughout rounds 2 to 5 for the most part. Pretty much impeccable, apart from that first entry right at the start of the fight after he got clipped. And to survive, obviously having your back taken by one of the best defensive grapplers in the game, is pretty impressive. But I spoke about this on the stream, something I absolutely love from Makhachev, and we can move on after this. But the technique, the ability to set traps, to work positionally, it's something Khabib never had. The thing that Khabib was so good at was really combining the grappling with an offensive striking pace. That was what he was good at. The ground and pound is what he used to tire out his opponents. It was just oppressive. Islam is much more methodical, positional-based grappling to get into those dominant positions and work it slowly, and get into the mount or the back take and then find the finish. That was that moment where he was fishing for the neck, trying to get the rear naked choke against Poirier in that first round. And the commentators picked up on this as well. He faked that shift into mount, and then he wasn't actually moving into it. He just used it to find the neck, and he very nearly caught it. There was a couple of times. And that just shows you how high level he is. And obviously you can look at the dart stroke, look at the finish, but it was the little details like that which I think just prove how good he is. And it's just years and years of drilling on the mat, but it just showed me how impressive he is just on the ground. It is quite impressive.
It's a good point to make. And I actually, coming into the fight, I did think that in the grappling, I know it sounds a bit strange, but I thought stylistically this was going to be a little bit more favourable for Dustin in the grappling. Not that I thought it was going to be easy by any means, but more so the style of Khabib, right? Very, very pressure orientated. He's smothering your face, he's punching you, and he's just cranking on the neck looking for chokes. So he's creating a lot of micro movements and he's asking you to make a lot of reactions. So I think it's easier to slip up and make that mistake, at least earlier in the fight as well. And when you're tired, of course, that compounds. I think with the style, like you said, of Islam, it's a lot more methodical. So then it sort of slides more into, okay, technique against technique. And Dustin, of course, he's not the level of grappler of Islam, but he's technically very good. And he's had a lot of high-level looks over his entire career. And we kind of saw that, right? We kind of saw that. It was a little bit slower paced on the ground than it would have been against a Khabib. And we saw him stay safe for the most part. And it was a good point that you brought up just in regards to the setting traps, because that was one thing. I was actually very fortunate to speak with Volk about that fight with Islam. And as a funny side tangent that'll make you laugh, I made a video the other day. I was just talking about the breakdown or something, and I made a point about something that I'd actually heard in the morning within the video, and I got a comment along the lines of something hateful and trolling, of course, as there always is.
I had a few of those this week as well.
It was something along the lines of, what do you know? It was something like that. But the thing that made me laugh so much is I just replied, true, or yeah, or lol, or something like that. But the actual truth is, I'm sitting there looking at this comment thinking, well, that information actually came from Alexander Volkanovski himself this very morning. So, like, that's
the
why
Holy Scripture.
The Holy Scripture. It came from the man himself, who's actually faced him twice. So, fairly reputable, I would say. A fairly accurate assessment, I think. But what I was actually going to say is, what he was saying is, it was exactly that, what you mentioned, is that chess match, right? Every time he's going for something, he's setting up another thing. And it just almost makes that first fight with Volk even more impressive when you go and watch it, because he was saying he wasn't necessarily ridiculously strong, but more so that his weight distribution, of course, was incredibly good and his positioning was so good. But he was setting you up for things 3 moves down the line, and you're having to counter that whilst countering the next move, and he's already countering your next move off of that. And it's just such a layered approach that is just lost on almost
it makes
everyone.
So nice to watch, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
It's just the methodical side of it. Something as well, just one last thing on that fight, was right before the finish. Again, as you said, after that ankle pick, sweep, golf swing, whatever you want to call it, it was just that instinctual pounce onto, to drive his hips on top of Poirier for that sprawl. Even at that point in that fight, you can tell how instinctual and predatorial it was, because how quick it was. You think about the fatigue and the slowness that had really kicked in at that point. That little split-second move, as if it was almost as if it was the first thing he'd done in the entire fight, because he knew the opportunity that presented itself there. It was like lightning. And you see that's the same thing whenever they shoot in. The pace is always there. And it's, again, I don't want to gush too much about the performance, because I do think it was pretty incredible. And I almost feel like there's not enough shine given to Makhachev. And you asked me, I didn't even answer the question earlier, who is next for Makhachev? Because I said Poirier retirement, but I didn't answer the other one. And I guess the logical pick is Arman Tsarukyan. I don't want to see him fight Leon yet. I do want to see that fight happening. It's something I've spoken in my stream a lot. It's a constant point of debate, in fact, between my community on who's going to win. But I think we need to enforce a little bit of a culture of clearing out your division, at least in some capacity, more before we have another super fight, because we've had too many of them. Let's not kid ourselves. I don't think a double champ fight should be on the cards just yet. Obviously, the spectacle's there. It would be an incredible fight. It's probably the most high-level matchup you can make right now, but it's not one I want to see just yet. I want to see the Arman Tsarukyan fight. It's got the storyline behind it. It's 2 men that have fought before at far inferior versions of themselves. Obviously, both have evolved, come so far in the fight game since, and I think it would be Islam's toughest test outside of Leon. I really do. I think in that division, in lightweight, don't think there's anyone who could give him as close of a fight as Arman can, especially on the mat. That's what I want to see. It's the grappling versus the grappling. That's excites me a lot. What about you?
I agree. 100%, to be perfectly honest. I like the idea and I like the sound of the Islam-Leon fight. Don't get me wrong. I think stylistically that's massive. I think star power-wise, that just accelerates Leon into another stratosphere, because Islam is undeniably one of the biggest names in the sport. And just touching on that as well, that's something I've really noticed recently with Leon, is just how much he has grown in regards to his star power, really. Even small metrics like looking at interviews and things like that. The other day I had a look through Ariel Helwani's interviews recently, just everything on MMA Hour, and Leon was clear of everyone that was on the show for like the last 4 months, apart from one person, and that was Eddie Hearn, and they were basically on par. But other than that, he eclipsed absolutely everyone, which I thought was super interesting. And this isn't I know it's coming up to his fight, but we're still not that close to it, right? We're still a little bit away in regards to MMA days. So I thought that was quite interesting. But yeah, coming back to what you said, 100%. I like big fights. I like the super fights. I like double champs. I like all of that. Anything that's just big. But Arman Tsarukyan stylistically is the most intriguing matchup from Islam ever since their first matchup. And I think nothing would propel the name of grappling in mixed martial arts like that matchup. And even, to be perfectly honest, I think the first fight, we saw a lot of grappling exchanges, but I won't get into the breakdown of it, but I'm not so sure that would necessarily be the case anymore. I think it would actually probably, for the most part, maybe even play out on the feet. It's super interesting either way, and I really want to see it. And the fact that Arman's got the momentum, he's got the big win over Charles, he was going to fight for the title anyway, it makes all the sense in the world. He's ready, he's healthy, he's raring to go. Make that fight. If he gets through that, then we can look down the line. I'm all about it. But yeah, definitely Arman next for sure.
Sorry, just real quick. I love how we are completely disregarding the fact that Bilal Muhammad has some part in this equation because Leon has to get through him first. Let's not forget that. Well, he needs to mention credit to Bilal. He has got the title shot at UFC 304, and we can't write him off because if he gets the win over Leon, that completely shakes up everything we're talking about. I personally don't think he gets it done, judging by their first fight and how good I think Leon is and has the potential to be. But still, we can't write him off. I think that's important to mention.
No, I get asked this a lot as well, what I think about that fight. And again, I won't get into necessarily the X and O's of it, but I don't think the first fight, I don't think either fighter is going to be paying too much attention to that, just because we didn't see a lot of footage. But I do think it's going to look quite similar, to be perfectly honest.
I do.
Yes, Bilal's improved. Yes, he's very well-rounded. Yes, he can strike. Yes, he can grapple. Yes, he can put it together. I just think everything that he does in a very simple overlook, Leon does to a higher level. I don't think he can take him down and control him. I don't think he can outstrike him. And I don't think he can necessarily hurt him. Now, the caveat I say to that is it's a title fight. There's a lot of pressure on Leon. Bilal's entire life and career has built up to this moment. He's been chasing Leon this whole time. So he's been studying his game. He's been watching him. He's been looking at him. He's in the camp of Khabib and Islam. He's surrounded by champions. He's got more confidence than he's ever had. So if he's ever going to do it, it's going to be now. Now, I think 10 times out of 10, I think Leon beats him more often than not. But I'm definitely not writing him out because it's a title fight.
No, I mean, look at last Saturday. Look at Saturday. Look how close that fight ended up being. I think it's fair to say we all thought that was going to be a bit of a, credit to Poirier, but we thought there was going to be a pretty routine win for Makhachev. Didn't end up being that. I had it by the round 2 submission or round 1 submission even, and potentially a knockout. I thought it was going to be a pretty dominant win. Ended up being far from it. So again, we can't rule anything out. And look what Leon did to Usman, UFC 278, the head kick. I mean, come on, no one's expecting that. I thought Leon would win that fight. I didn't think he'd knock out the pound for pound king. So we can't write off anyone in this game, and that's why we love watching it. But I have to pick Leon. And I just wanted to go back to the Makhachev Tsarukyan fight and the potential of a Leon matchup as well. If I had to sort of put you on the spot on who wins both of those, both of those matchups, who have you got?
Honestly, I think the Arman Tsarukyan Islam fight is an absolute pick'em. I think it's an absolute pick'em. I don't think there's anything. I would have to go through, both of their most recent fights and really watch it on slow-mo to look at holes and defensive holes and areas to exploit for either opponent. But when it comes to the grappling, I think they're on par with each other, to be perfectly honest. And then I think Islam has the edge when it comes to submission offense, but I think they're basically on par with each other. Athleticism on par. I think striking Islam is potentially slightly more layered, but honestly, a pick 'em. I would have to flip a coin with that. And then in regards to the Leon and which one did you ask me? Leon Islam?
Makhachev. Yeah.
I think Leon beats him. To be
So do I.
perfectly honest. Again, very close fight. Stylistically very interesting. Two southpaws, quite an intriguing matchup. I just think that Leon has proven that he can stay safe and get to his feet on the ground. He's more than capable. His defensive wrestling is arguably the best in the UFC. The way that he controls the wrist, gets back to his feet and keeps it striking, super impressive. Seen him go a hard 5. And on the feet, I just think he's slicker than Islam. And Islam's fantastic. Slicker. And has got a lot of skills. And a lot of things that he does goes very underappreciated. But I just think Leon is slightly a step ahead. So that's what I think on those.
I think the size difference is such a huge factor. I don't think people realize how big Leon is for welterweight. And it's quite crazy when you see how good he looks in his weight cuts. He doesn't look drained ever, really. He looks in pretty good nick whenever he steps on the scales, which is so surprising every time because you see him in the cage when he's fighting. He looks huge for the weight class. And it won't surprise. Honestly, it won't surprise me if we get that Makhachev fight, he gets that win, and then we see him move straight up to middleweight in back to back. I could see that happening. I really could. And I think he'd do well up there too. I don't think he'd look too small.
I've stood next to both guys.
Maybe that is a little bit hyperbolic, but
I've stood next to both guys, and one of them was Islam in his fight week, so he's obviously going to be a little bit more trim. And one was Leon outside of fight camp, so he's obviously going to be a little bit heavier. Don't think there's going to be a crazy size difference, but I think it's going to be enough for it to give Leon a little edge. If we're seeing the likes of Volk, if we're seeing the likes of Dustin, being able, again, it comes back to what I mentioned earlier, what Volk said. It's not that he's freakishly strong. Of course he's very strong. Of course he is. You only need to look at his physique to understand that. It's more so the application of his techniques, which is strong. It's his application and how pinpoint accurate it is and how every fiber is channeled into the perfect submission. That's more so the strength. I don't think it's necessarily brute force. I think that's where people get a little bit, they blur the lines a little bit. So I think Leon is going to be a little bit bigger, a little bit longer. But I don't think it's going to be a huge factor. And that's just me making an educational guess. But Leon's big. Leon's about the same height as me. When I stood next to him, he's about 6'2".
How tall are you?
His
6'2"?
shoulders are big.
Yeah,
his shoulders are big. Like his back's big. Obviously, his waist is super narrow. So the thing is, as well, is when you have
he's the aesthetic man.
But what people forget is they think reach. They think reach is your arms. It is, but it isn't. It's your back as well. If you have a very, very wide upper back, it just accentuates your reach. And he does. And then when you compound that with the fact that his striking is so well executed, he fully extends his left arm. So he maximizes all of the reach on his shots. So I think it's going to be hard for Islam to actually get in on Leon when I look at that fight. But let's not get too much into that because I'm sure we could talk about that for ages.
Yeah, let's not look at the future. Let's look at the present because actually today, just before we recorded, I saw this morning. I'm assuming you know where I'm going to go with this. UFC 303, the upcoming pay-per-view for next month. There was an anticipated press conference in Dublin, of all places, that was meant to be scheduled today between McGregor and Michael Chandler. Obviously part of a big press tour of some sorts, I imagine, to build up hype. But it was cancelled today with no notice of why, which is where I guess I'll throw you the question. You can put on your detective cap, be a bit of Sherlock Holmes. Why do you think we've had a sudden cancellation with no explanation and no future date penned in?
There's two answers.
I think I know which one it probably is.
Nung, that is one in Thai, is
very good.
a lot of people believe that it's just Conor McGregor being a degenerate, cancelling it, being
that
hungover.
was my first protocol.
Being along those lines. My answer to that is possibly. Possibly. My second answer to that is I struggle to see that necessarily being the reason. Conor McGregor's never done that before. I don't care what he's been on Instagram recently. He's never done that before. He is absolutely loved in Ireland and loves any opportunity of giving back to those fans. And it's not anything physical. It's quite literally a press conference. So
I'm actually going to counter you here quickly. I'm going to have to step in because I actually don't think that's true. I actually think he has, not necessarily in Dublin. I'm fairly certain. I forgive me if I'm wrong here. But when I was doing research for my history of the UFC video, I remember reading, I believe it was for UFC 200 was the original pen date for McGregor Diaz 2. That is true. And I believe part of the reason it didn't happen was because McGregor wasn't fulfilling his media obligations. So I will have to jump in there. Yeah, obviously I said not in Ireland specifically, but he has had a history of either not fulfilling those obligations. And another one I can point to is when he was late for a press conference at 229 and ended up doing it by himself because Khabib left as a result. That's a little bit of a less of a scale. Not the scale. But the other one, the initial one, as I said, I believe did happen. So I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to have to double check that. But
it's a fair point. It for sure is a fair point. And like I said, it may be the case. I don't know. But a big part of this puzzle that a lot of people actually won't know, and I did just make a video on this, and a lot of people sort of had a few raised eyebrows when I posted this because this isn't common knowledge, at least to the general populace of MMA fans. I also think it could be something quite abstract because this week, Ticketmaster got hacked by quite a notorious hacking group. That. And they have stolen the details of over 560 million users, 500 million users, names, addresses, card details, and they are selling it on the dark web for I think about £500,000. Now, that very much can be a reason. And a lot of people were quick, a lot of people were quick to ask me, no, that's not the case because otherwise UFC would just say it's them. No, they wouldn't. That doesn't make a lot of sense because if the UFC came out and said, oh, by the way, it's just Ticketmaster has just been hacked and they've got everyone's details, that just creates chaos amongst fans and the community. And it creates a lot of panic and it removes a lot of stress. It adds a lot of stress to a lot of people that have maybe bought tickets previously and also currently for the event. So, of course, this is not 100% the case, and maybe it's just coincidental. But if you were going to press me for an answer, whether it was McGregor or this, I would say I'm about 65-35 in favour of
I don't think you ever can be certain McGregor. When it's McGregor. Let's be honest. Yeah. A guy is
I don't know.
And even then, the funny thing is, we talk all this shit about McGregor. We do say these things about McGregor, and we do criticise him for a lot of things, and we do sort of take the piss and have a laugh.
I don't.
But at the end of the day, I think we're both in agreement that we still think he knocks out Michael Chandler, which I think is the funny thing. So, yeah, you never know what's going to happen with that, man. I'm excited either way. I'm excited for the matchup. But slowly, that card is growing on me. I said this the other day. I didn't think the card was that stacked, and I think as a whole, it's not. But the main card, shoot me, I think it's all right. Even with Khalil Roundtree missing, which sucks because I would love to see him fight. But Carlos Ulberg versus Jamal Hill is fun. Ian Gary versus Michael Venom Page, I think, is really fun. And of course, you've got the main event. So there's 3 good, fun fights, at least on the main card. But I will concede the prelims, rough. I'll give you that.
Myra Buena-Silva.
Yeah, she's got to be off there. Swap that fight, man. Swap that fight. Get that out of here.
Not it.
Did she fight Raquel Pennington, right?
I'm not trying to be spiteful here.
For the belt?
Watching her last fight was
torture.
Painful.
Let's go with
because the build-up was fun. She was lively in the build-up. That's cool. And then she was in a title fight on the 5th round, losing every round. And then on her back, just kind of oblique kicking the girl's leg. I don't care to watch her fight for an extensive period of time, and let alone watch her on a main card. I actually don't know who is on the rest of that card from top to bottom, but I can almost guarantee, I can guarantee that there is something on the early prelims or the prelims that is exponentially better than that.
I'll throw it up now.
Yeah, please do, because I'm not convinced that's it. Joe Pyfer, I don't think that's a bad move. I don't think that's a bad move.
Slap that on the main card. Bang. That's a certified banger. Straight banger. Swanson Feely, that's a great fight.
It's a flipping no-brainer.
Peyton Talbot's on the early prelims. Slap him on there. Give him a good big boost. Why not? No bigger stage than a McGregor card. Why wouldn't you put him as the featured prelim, let alone the main card? Crazy.
Cub Swanson and Andre Feely, two legends of the featherweight division, on the main card of one of the greatest featherweights of all time. It's a no-brainer. Legendary matchup. Get rid of Myra Buenasilva on that main card. I'm not trying to see that.
You got vendetta, mate. Yeah, against Macy Chiasson. I can't be arsed with it. Just get that. It's just
when you look at Conor McGregor main cards, they're always bad. They're always bad. And I understand.
I don't need to explain why. Yeah.
I understand it, but it doesn't need to be that bad. There's no reason. We've even got better fights on the card. So let's not mess about. And let's not act like
it might get moved. You never know.
Oh, let's flipping hope, because let's not act like the numbers mean anything.
Almeida was on the main card until just a few days before the fights took place on Saturday. Mate. So
don't get me started on that fight. Don't get me started on that. I didn't actually
see it because I woke up for the main card because I had a very long day, so I had to nap for 2 hours. So I only watched the main card, thankfully, because I saw all the decision after decision after decision, which made me feel good about my decision. Good pun there, unintentionally. But
Alexander Romanov has, I think he's one fight away from getting cut, to be perfectly honest, or at least he should get cut with one more fight. He has completely checked out of the game. Yeah. Completely.
Did he have a lot of hype when he joined the UFC?
He was on a tear. He was on a tear, and then he had a bad loss to, please remind me who it was.
I'm testing your knowledge here.
He got absolutely gassed. He couldn't even breathe or stand up, and it went past. It was another big. Was it Marcin Tybura?
Marcin Tybura. Yeah.
Elite knowledge.
Then Alexander Volkov after that.
I knew it was a big Eastern European guy. So he got absolutely gassed against Marcin Tybura because, and I understand why, he'd been steamrolling everyone. So okay, cool. You're given the benefit of the doubt. But then ever since then, he's got progressive. I think he made his debut in the UFC at 230 or 240 pounds. And then ever since that loss, and I think even going into that loss, he comes in at the absolute weight limit. Now, there's utility to that at times, but not for him. There's no utility in that for him. It's clear that he's not doing a lot of work in the training room, hence why he was so ridiculously gassed in that fight, and hence why he just doesn't look very dialed into any of the fights. He's got a Greco-Roman background. That's what his background is, wrestling, Greco-Roman. So that's upper body wrestling. And then he gets taken down. Now, Jailton Almeida's very, very good. But Jailton Almeida walks up to him, gets a body lock takedown, trips him down and submits him. And, okay, that's one thing. Jailton Almeida has pretty much one submission on his record, a rear naked choke. So if you're coming against this guy, you know, okay, we need to work on our rear naked choke defense. He gets his back taken, does not address the hands at any point, which is day one white belt rear naked choke defense. Not even how to address the hands, just to address them. Not even how, just to address them. He doesn't do that. He then grabs the cage to try and pull himself back to his feet whilst he's still on his back. And then just as he's about to get choked unconscious, he thinks, okay, actually, now I'll address the choking hand. And then he starts trying to grab his forearm here. And I just think, with two hands, he just starts trying to grab his forearm. And I think, yeah, cut this guy. Actually cut this guy. I know it sounds dramatic, but
it's a little bit late to grab the forearm when it's already under the chin. Do you know what I mean?
The forearm, like, that's the worst leverage point of stripping the grip, of stripping the hands. Like, you have absolutely nothing there. It's sunk under the chin, and he's got two hands. Come here. No. That's just ridiculous.
Wait, hang on. I'm confused. The forearm.
The forearm.
I mean, there's a good grip point there. Am I crazy, or am I just getting my anatomy wrong here?
You've got a heavy weight under your chin, locked in rear naked choke, and instead of addressing the grip.
Oh, right. Yeah, sorry. No, I'm being stupid.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
You've got no leverage on the middle
of
the forearm whatsoever. And especially you have no, and you not even leverage from a stripping perspective, but you have no leverage from actually a grip perspective. Whereas from the fingers at the top, a lot more leverage to release pressure on the choke, infinitely more. So it's like, that's just a bit of a small detail of what just annoyed me, but I think he should get cut.
You're out on a tear today. Honestly, you came for some. You just targeted him. Myra Silva and now Alexander Romanov.
Losing a fight doesn't wind me up. Getting choked unconscious doesn't wind me up. None of that annoys me. But being a wrestler that gassed out and has consequently since then got heavier and heavier, less conditioned, and has grappled seemingly less.
That's true.
Is just a waste of a spot, to be honest.
Yeah, I think I can agree with that. Especially when you look at how competitive the UFC is and how demanding it is and how many people are vying to be in the position that you're in. I feel like you have to hold yourself to a certain standard.
Bro,
right?
He started climbing up the cage. You deserve to be in there. He started climbing. I can't get over this. It wound me up so much.
Nah, forget the hands, mate. I'm turning into a monkey. Oh my!
He's literally on his back, and he kind of makes it just to 1 foot, and then he just starts grabbing the cage and starts climbing up the cage. And I just think, oh my goodness, these guys fully
best
lost
base
the
for
plot
MMA,
there.
mate.
Fully lost the plot, but yeah, that's rant over.
It's a fickle game. Yeah, I mean, obviously we can look ahead from some MMA because I can tell you're probably getting a little bit annoyed, frustrated with some of the decisions past and present and future. So let's just jump into some creative stuff to round off the last few minutes. What's been going on with you in terms of your Thailand expeditions outside of meeting Volkanovski and the stuff you've been doing over the past couple of weeks? Obviously, you are returning to the UK pretty soon with UFC 304. I know you've got some big stuff planned, which we've talked about on here before. But what are you doing to close out the last month or so in the sunshine of Thailand?
Honestly, the last probably next 4 weeks is just completely geared towards UFC 304. To be honest, it's completely focused on that event and getting all my eggs. I was going to say all my eggs in my basket. That's not the saying. All my ducks in a row.
Eggs in one basket. That is a saying.
All my ducks in a row, I think is the right one.
I ain't heard that one.
Yeah, I think it's that. Yeah,
listen, either works.
One of them. So I'm just essentially on the build up to that. I'm just trying to get everything in place so I can smash that week as much as I can because there's a lot going on. Obviously, there's projects I've got that I want to do. Little things like street interviews. Then I've got bigger things like the giveaways of some of the clothes and the comics and things like that. I've been invited on a couple of podcasts, so I'll be going to there. I'm doing breakdown videos.
You'd like to say who? Out of curiosity.
Yeah, of course. So one of them is, I got asked the other day, one of them is the strength and conditioning coach for Chris Duncan, for Mick Parkin, and for a few other guys on the card. And so I'll be doing a podcast with him. Then, of course, I'll be filming and doing content for Nathaniel. Then, of course, one of the big projects is the giveaway that I want to do. And then on top of that, I've got a bunch of other content that I want to film as well. So there's a lot going on in that week. So I really want to try and maximize it. I've managed to get a friend that I know that works in his production company. He's going to be coming with me and essentially shadowing my week. And we'll be creating content around that. So I'll have someone creating my behind the scenes. And then I'll have my editor on hand as well. So hopefully it will be quite a good harmony in regards to the circle of life of the content.
Okay.
And so I've pretty much just been gearing up towards that, really. We're starting to now jump on calls calls with people like Block Asset to hopefully get some work done.
Nice.
I've been jumping on calls with my editor to make sure everything's in place. And then more so than that, been actually trying to get all of the clothing items, get the prototypes and get them perfected so that when I can actually start giving them to people or selling a couple, they're at a very certain quality. So that's pretty much what's on the agenda for the next 4 months.
That's
I did
exciting.
actually spend my birthday in Phuket. So I've got
Oh, it was your birthday? I didn't know it was your birthday.
On the 30th, yeah. I didn't really make a big deal of it, to be perfectly honest.
Late
Not
birthday.
online, I didn't.
26, right? 26?
Yeah, 20. Yeah, Yi Sip
Getting old, mate. Getting old.
Yi Sip Hock is. So
Yi Sip
I didn't really make a big deal of it. When I was younger, when I was really young, I used to look at my Facebook timeline and see how many people had posted on there and think, oh, that's more than last year. And now I just, I love
another year
my
closer
birthday,
to the grave.
And I like celebrating it. I think it's important to celebrate every event, but I don't care to have 90 people reach out to me that I have little to no communication with and have small talk over. I appreciate it. Don't get me wrong if people were to do that, but I don't need that at all, to be honest. I'd rather go on my phone less in the day rather than more. I spend a lot of time replying to people in comments and things like that. So I spoke to my mum.
I will say, I was going to ask you this just quickly. Did you hit 100,000 on TikTok on your birthday? Or was that today? I saw you hit 100K.
Today.
So congrats on that. Nice. Congrats on that. That was super
Thank you. Mate, I went absolutely... I told you before, one of the biggest benefits of being in Thailand is when the card finishes at pay-per-view, it finishes at about 12 p.m. So what I did was I had a shower, had an iced coffee, and I went, boom, straight into creating content. I didn't schedule them. Nothing like that. I just, one after each other, posted 12 videos, and each video averaged 100,000 views.
Mad.
Yeah. So just yesterday alone, I got about 1.4 or 5 million views just from the UFC 304 event. It was a pretty hectic one. So that sort of boosted me over the line. So yesterday alone, I probably got about 1,000 followers. So that was the tipping point. But so it wasn't my birthday. It was probably yesterday.
And I will just call back. I remember you said when we were doing an episode, I think it was around January, we were talking about our goals this year. I know you said you wanted to hit 100,000 on Instagram and TikTok, and you said it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when this year. You were going to do it this year. It's going to happen. And I already knew. I was in complete agreement of that. And you're halfway there. If you want to look at the metrics, obviously, in terms of you've done it on TikTok, now comes Instagram. And I don't think you're too far off that either, right? What are you on now? Something like that. Obviously, we don't want to get too caught up in the metrics, but it is a measurement of how well things are going in many ways.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's 52 now on Instagram, but it's more what I realize is we've had this conversation many times.
Yes, yeah.
The truth of it is very, very desensitized to whatever that number says or the metric of that. And I truly am. I truly mean that. But there's also utility to it. There's a tremendous amount of utility to it. And the truth of it is the social proof 100%. And we've spoke about that before, so I won't go into it. But it's more so when I see these numbers climb and I see these rise on my Instagram, on my TikTok and things like that across all platforms. I think now it's 160,000 casuals. So that's a solid base of people, right? It's more so when I go to places, when I go to gyms, when I go to events, when I meet people, or just when I'm randomly talking to people and they say, oh, do you have Instagram? And I was like, oh, Casuals Corner. And I go, oh, I was watching your videos last night. This happened last week. They went, oh, I was watching your videos last night. It's little things like that. They're the bits that actually hit home. It's not
exactly. It is. It's
hitting
the
certain numbers.
Real life
it's
applications.
The engagements.
I've said this before. I mentioned a while back. There was a time where one of my friends, I hadn't spoken to him a while. Like one of my mates way back from school. I ended up just having a chat with him randomly, and he was like, "Oh, I watched this video." He asking me about my YouTube channel, And I just linked in one of my new things at the time. He's like, "Oh, I watched this. I didn't even realize this was you." And it's just how crazy it is that it's, obviously you see the metrics and you see the numbers, but you do get desensitized until it applies to you in like the real world, and you're like, well, "That's a bit weird, isn't it?" Like it means so much more. Yeah, I don't know. I'm surprised by that. I guess when your brain's turned off. Obviously, I do speak differently on when I record. I think everyone does that. But not to a point where you wouldn't recognize it was me. If you knew me, you'd know it's me. So, and it's, I don't know. But again, you get the point. I think obviously it's the intimate moments, it's the human moments that matter more.
That was obviously covered a lot about what I've been up to, but let's not forget that you've been busy and you've been grinding away in the background. So give me a little update with everything that.
Yeah.
Because before we even jumped on the call, you showed me the what's it called? The skate wing. Get
I'll
out.
give it a chance.
Whip it out.
I actually have it here.
Manta Ray.
Manta sleep masks. Manta sleep masks. That's the name of the brand. So shout out to them. I was working with them on my new video, which I actually put out. Finally was able to put it out. I had some scheduling issues because I was waiting on the all clear from them to add the sponsored segment, basically, and then I could post the video. But they had issues viewing the preview, so I had to make it public so they could actually check it. And then it basically ended up meaning a delay, so the video ended up going out 2 days late. I already apologized to my community, so they already know. If any listeners who are avid fans of the channel, they know. But it is out, and it was pretty cool doing the sponsor segment. Try to sort of weave in a bit of humor, which I was worried about because it was tonally dissonant from, compared to the rest of the video, but I thought it'd be a bit of fun. It was a good experiment, good excuse to use the camera a bit more. And I actually have it here. It's pretty cool. Shout out to Manta Sleep for sending me. They actually sent me their product, which is pretty cool. It's like a sleep mask, and this one has Bluetooth headphones built in, so I love to listen to music when I sleep. And now I can actually sleep on my side freely. Nah, we're not doing that.
Come on. What are we playing at? Just give me some.
I can't hear you now, so bear with me. Hang on a minute.
Well, just know that I'm abusing you in this moment. Flipping, give me all the talk about how good.
Hang on, I've got the headphones back on.
Yeah, you look like an absolute.
How am I looking? Am I good?
Fantastic, mate.
Lovely.
It does look like a AR set, right?
Yeah, it's quite bulky at the front, but it's not heavy. So, yeah, for the audio listeners, by the way, so anyone who's got this on in the background, I am wearing a very chunky, high-tech looking sleep mask, which is actually very comfortable. And the blackout on it, I have to say, is pretty good. It's very good, actually. I barely see any daylight, but it does nuke your eyes when I wake up in the morning. I have to say that. I wake up, see the daylight. My eyes are blinded. I like sleeping with the sun coming onto my eyes when I wake up. So it's a bit of a difference in that regard. But yeah, it was fun to film that segment. Video is actually coming out. It was already out on yesterday. It's done pretty well. Had performed pretty well, which I'm always happy about. Obviously, trying to work with some other brands. I've had a couple of other brands reach out to me, which is fun. So waiting back from them. Stream is going well. Moving to 3 streams a week now. We're averaging a really nice audience of people. Shout out to the stream crew. They know they are, because I'm pretty much always the same people every week, along with some new additions who end up jumping in and staying on. And it's really fun. We're averaging about 25, 30 people most days concurrently. Nice. So it's a lot of fun. Really growing the audience out. I love doing the streams, trying to find new things to do with my audience, not just on the stream front, but I mean in general, interacting with my viewership, sort of using the Discord, communicating. I really want to foster that community. I spoke loads of times about that way back when you talked about getting on camera for the first time, because I hadn't really done it outside of the podcast. And it was just a matter of, for me, I always said it was finding the right time and reason to do it. And you just said jump into it. And that's what I did with my YouTube channel. And that's what I ended up doing with the streams. So fast forward to now, it's going really well. Yeah, really enjoying the process on all aspects, just really incorporating my personality and me slowly injecting that into the content I make, on top of maintaining the high standard that I set. And obviously the videos have improved massively. Again, I don't want to ramble too much, but really proud of the stuff I'm making. In fact, the video I'm making this week is a little bit shorter than usual, but I think it's on a really interesting topic. In fact, for those who are listening to the pod, a little bit, I'll give you an exclusive scoop. I'm doing a video on James Toney, who you'll probably be familiar with. He was the only recognized boxer, if I'm not mistaken, who competed in the UFC. So I'm doing a video on him, and in more of a wider scope, boxing versus MMA as a debate. I sort of merged the two together, but it was a really fun one to write. We started the edit today.
I hope you don't forget Clarissa Shields in that, because I remember I made a post.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Oh, why'd you say that? No, because I've done the script. I've recorded it.
because I made a
my
post.
days.
I made a post about the crossover. I can't remember what I said exactly. Oh, but my God, she went crazy
That's
on my
annoying.
post. She started abusing me. I didn't
Wait,
even
what?
say. Yeah, she's not abusing, but
Whoa! I want to hear this.
got info. I'm sure I told you this before.
I
No?
want to hear this. You haven't. You have not.
Oh, well, I made some sort of content around a very similar topic, right? And I didn't actually say. Maybe I did. I can't remember what terminology I used, but it was around this conversation. And then she pops up on the comments. The video went pretty viral, and then she popped up on the comments of it saying, "What about me?" basically, and yeah, there was a lot of discourse in that comment, a lot of that comment section.
No, boy.
I felt a little
Did
bit
you entertain
bad,
it?
but of course, yeah, of course. I can't
What did
remember
you
what I
say?
said, but I can't remember. But I don't think it was as harsh
Something
as like
abhorrent.
yeah, something terrible. But yeah, so don't forget her, because obviously Savannah Marshall this weekend as well.
She had, just real quick, she had the worst run of commentary I've ever seen. Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano. One of my actual favorite boxing fights ever. I've mentioned this before, but my God, her commentary was the most biased thing I've ever seen in my life. So I will criticize her for that. I know she could beat me up. I don't care. I will criticize that.
But just on the topic of live streams, one of the people that a piece of content, things that but pretty much the only content that I consume is
Podcast and Tiny Desks.
Pretty much. It's pretty much it. That actually kind of is sadly correct. It actually is Tiny Desk and Podcast, to be perfectly honest. I wasn't going to say that, but that's exactly what it is. So one of the podcasts that I've got, not necessarily a podcast, but something that I listen to now, and these are not necessarily things that I put on and watch for the entirety. It's things that I can have on in the background whilst I'm doing work and whilst I'm doing smaller tasks that don't require as much sort of energy or at least attention. But something I've had on recently, it made me think of it because you said about streams, is Luke Thomas's stream. Obviously, he's one of the best minds in the game, right? But it's definitely... I knew this anyway. I've known this for a long time, but watching that so much has really made me realize the utility of doing that. Of course, from a brand building perspective, of course, from a community engagement perspective, and then, of course, on the back end of that, having more engagement and more content in a very simple, digestible way. So it's definitely something that I've been looking at a lot. And I even before we did this, I did a live stream on my TikTok, and it's just always been a flipping nightmare doing it on YouTube, to be transparent and just to pull the curtain back a little bit. It's just always a nightmare on the studio. Just, it never seems to flipping set up correctly. It never seems to go live correctly. It's not user friendly. Yeah, it just is not user friendly whatsoever. TikTok.
But I don't know if you know this. I think you probably do know this, but there's vertical streaming now on YouTube. I haven't tried this. I know some of my community were talking about doing it. Yeah, so it's basically exactly the same as the way TikTok does it. And it pops up in shorts feeds. So they've started, they've ran that out now. So maybe you want to give that a crack.
Way more sense. Wow. That's a little gem you just dropped on me there.
I personally don't, because I feel like for me it fosters a sort of, not a false image, but it's not the right image that I want to, portray. That with short streaming, I feel like it's a lot more
devil's advocate
in the moment. Shoot, I know what you're gonna say, but
what am I gonna say?
You're gonna say we've had this, not on the exact line of conversation, but we've had this debate before about the nature of short form content versus long form, and we talked about it on the Troy Robert episode actually. Not on the same exact vein.
My point on that is, this isn't what I was going to say, but it was just because I weirdly had a thought about that conversation the other day, and it made me double down on my thoughts. My approach to that, and for context, anyone listening, we were having the discussion over creating vertical and horizontal videos, essentially. YouTube and TikTok is probably an easier way of saying that. And Troy and yourself were talking about the value and what you can gain from horizontal videos or YouTube. And I agree with absolutely everything. There's nothing I actually disagree with. And I do believe that you should always create content on the thing you're most interested about, you're most passionate about. And it comes back to your goals as well. It's like, what are your goals? If your goals are to be a YouTuber, then it doesn't really make a lot of sense to make short form content if you want to be the best YouTuber. But there's the reason I always push back on it is because I experience firsthand engaging with and absorbing content in short form, which leads me into the long form. Because I would never go out of my way and listen to a random hour and a half podcast about any topic from people that I don't know, because I have to be a lot more selective than that. I have a lot of ones that I like or listen to or I knew give good value. So I'm not going to go out of my way to give that. So what the short form gives you, it gives you super digestible and quicker points that of course you can brand build and create awareness. But what it does is it gives people glimpses of the brand in much more digestible ways so that they can then lead into the long form. It's not necessarily...
But equally, do you not think it translates that well? Because I feel like data has shown, I mean, particularly on YouTube, again, I'm mainly speaking from a YouTube perspective here, that short form viewership doesn't necessarily translate to long form.
No,
in terms
doesn't.
Of translating that specific audience over. So
not necessarily, no.
You know, that's my counter.
Not necessarily, no. But this is my point, right? It's almost impossible to say, okay, this person came from short form and this... That's not my point that I'm making. My point that I'm making is the value that short form brings to long form creators. Like I said, you have to know your goals. If you turn around, if one turns to me and says, okay, I want to be the best YouTuber in the world, nothing else, nothing more. Okay, cool. Do nothing else than YouTube. But if one turns to me and says, I want to create an audience and a brand, I just think, yeah, again, it comes back to what you want to achieve, but you're best serving the audience if you can give them different ways of absorbing your content. Because there will be a lot of people that only absorb on the long form. Because this is what I'm trying to explain. It's like, I don't have a horse in the race. I'm not saying one is better than the other. That's not the case. They both have their pros. They both have their cons. My simple point is, I know for me personally, there's a lot of creators that I've watched. Not saying that every time you watch short form, it translates over, but there's a lot of creators that I've watched short form of that I've taken knowledge from, inspiration, education, entertainment, whatever it is. And I've got touch points of that person, of that brand, and of that identity. And it just translates into many, many different ways. It doesn't even necessarily mean I'm going to go to YouTube and watch.
I think that's more of a minority though, right? That's what I would say. I feel like most people don't, particularly on short form, don't take that extra mile. Do you know what I mean? They don't make that extra effort, something that you would do. Or
but that's my point.
Another example, Lionel Rivera is a perfect example of that on YouTube. The reason his long form is so successful is because on his short form, he gradually started introducing his personality and his brand into the content. And it was clear, it was obvious, it was him, right? And then on long form, that translated over well. And obviously on top of the fact his long form stuff is very good. So shout out to him.
I'm not articulating myself
on YouTube
well enough to be perfectly honest, because I've given that a poor example where I'm saying about crossing over. My point is not, let me be very, very clear on this. My point is not to make short form to take people over to your long form. That's not my point. That's just a potential residual effect. Potential. That's just my point.
Do you mean in terms of leaving an impact then?
Well, my point is, if one, again, says, okay, hello, I want to create a big audience, big brand, and I want a lot of people to know who I am or what I do, in very simple terms. My point to that is, okay, you have to, and this is what I'm realizing a million times over, you have to have millions, and I mean this, it's not even an exaggeration, millions of touch points. So if your goal is to create the biggest brand and audience from that, if that's the goal, then the result of that is creating more touch points. So it's not to say that short form always translates people into long form and you should do it because of that. No, that's just maybe something that will happen.
Combined effort.
My point is it just gives more touch points and it gives more micro engagements of people. Maybe they don't watch the video, go onto your long form on your YouTube. Maybe they don't watch the whole video. But what it does is it sends into people's feeds and people's subconscious, Casuals Corner, like millions and millions and millions of repetitions and these tiny touch points. So it's like, I kind of explained myself poorly a couple of times.
No, I get you. It is a combined effort, isn't it? Of just covering every base, I suppose, is probably the better way.
But it comes back to, it always comes back to what the goal is. Like I said, what the goal is, because you have to be very unequivocal about what the goal is. Because if the goal, like I said, is to be the Mr. Beast of YouTube, then it makes sense to spend all your time and attention on YouTube, because it's not a quick process of like, okay, just make shorts and put them on other platforms. That's not. My point is like, if anyone's listening and they're like, okay, I want to build a big brand and a big community, you have to service those people in different ways sometimes. You have to, because I guarantee even you will have viewers and watchers that don't even necessarily watch all your content, because sometimes they don't even necessarily have time to watch a full 20 minutes, and maybe a 30-second recap of the video is actually much better for them on that day, not even necessarily forever, just on that day. So there's just so many little nuances to why I think that it potentially accelerates value. It's not to say that they'll translate all new people into long form. I think that's maybe what it sounded like a few times, and that isn't really what.
Yeah, no. I've got you now. I've got you.
Does that make sense?
Meaty little fucking. That's a meaty little way to
explain myself that well. Yeah, I don't know.
No, I've got you. No, I've got you. I hope the audience.
It's just because the rate where we can sort of end it is what I'm really. I feel like now I'm at a point where I have enough experience of creating content just at a very, very surface level, just creating content and growing a couple of platforms to realize that if one of my sole objectives is to grow a community, to grow a brand, it's, of course, quality is a massive thing. Of course, your angle, your niche, all of that. Like, let's forget all of that. It's very, very well known. It all comes back, I've realized, to touch points. How many touch points can you create with the people in your niche? Because when you create,
I need to improve on that myself.
It's not just strictly quantity. Oh, I'll make as many of these. Again, there's more nuance to it than that. But it all comes back to touch points, and sometimes that can be online, and what that will look like is videos on different platforms and videos in different styles and having your brand attached to it. But also touch points can come in real life. If you're someone that's sitting there saying, okay, I want to be an interviewer, I want to go to these events, okay, well, an example of what touch points would look like in real life is go to more events, get your face associated to more of these places. You may not even flip and speak to anyone in the industry, but if your face is there, people will slowly start thinking, okay, I'm at this event, I see this face. Oh, I'm at another event, I see this face. Let me speak to this person. Who are you? It compounds, and you do that for a month, you do that for 6, you do that 100%. For a year, you do it for 3, you do it for 10. And if your game really,
10-year plan,
if one's game is to really establish themselves as a brand, as a platform in this space, you have to create touch points, as many as you can, and with as much quality and with as much feedback so you can improve on that as possible. But that is a big rant over, but a little bit of insight.
Bang, mic drop right there. You got to drop it. There you go. This has been the MMA Creators Podcast, episode number 53, I believe we're on. Thank you so much for listening. Apologies for this coming out on a Monday. That was my fault. And we will see you, hopefully regularly scheduled, next Sunday. Cheers.